Hello out there, casual fanatics. Jeremy here. This isn't really a casual vlog per se. Certainly not a shadow shoot. It's just really me being a little introspective about things and just kind of thinking about stuff. I don't have a script here. As you can see, I'm sitting a little differently than I normally do. I'm a little sitting sideways here because I'm a little just a little kind of casual here, even more so than usual. What I've been thinking about is largely the way things have been going in this world. There's a goddamn lot of hate out there. You know, a lot of hate, largely directed to people against people who are not white, not male, not rich, not straight. And I mean, you already know how I feel about that. I mean, I think I've made that clear, even in little ways over the course of multiple different videos. Even in some of my Let's Plays, when I've been working with some games that have, you know, kind of social statement content in them. But the thing that gets me the most about this is how people see right and wrong differently. How people, for lack of a better phrase, moral relativity. You know, I try to keep what I think of right and wrong fairly simple. But, you know, there are a lot of people in this world who get an idea of what's right and what's wrong when they are younger from some kind of source, be it from their parents, be it from religion, and they never grow out of it. Their concept of how the world works and what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, never actually changes. And I look back at myself and just from within myself, I know that's not the case. There's a lot that I've learned when I was way younger, when I was in my, avid church going days when, family would go to a more fundamentalist kind of church, evangelical Christian. There's a lot of things that I learned that I was told back then that was right and wrong that I have since learned was some of the most ridiculous stuff I've ever heard. There's a lot that is considered gateways to evil from back then that I now realize was really just either from a lack of understanding or a complete lack of desire to understand. Video games, for the most part, were considered evil, although there were some Christian video games, and God knows I had some of those. Maybe I'll play one of them for casual mode at some point. And a lot of toys were considered evil, particularly ones that um, you know, weren't of Bible characters. Barbie was evil because she's going to make girls, not be the appropriate kind of girly. It's going to give them body issues. It's going to make them think. It's going to make them materialistic. And GI Joes are evil because guns and violence. You know, they'd preach against violence in toys and video games and TV shows on one hand, and on the other hand, talk about the dispensationalist interpretation of the Book of Revelation. The one that you commonly see in things like Left Behind and other kind of Christian media, where it is literal hell on earth because it's a literal war between heaven and hell. When I was younger, I didn't recognize the cognitive dissonance of such things. I didn't recognize how that didn't match up. It was only when I got older and I actually started studying that kind of stuff myself that I realized this does not make a lot of sense. Where did they get this? Where did this come from? And, over the years, what I have personally considered right and wrong has evolved greatly. I mean, there was a time that I will admit I foolishly disparaged the androgynous characters of, say, like Final Fantasy and other video games, because at the time I didn't understand it. It became a great irony when I later found out that was something I was actually attracted to, and that was part of the reason why I found out I was bisexual. So, yeah, joke on me there, huh? But, a lot of the things that, I started to prize things like genuine love over a specific kind of love. I started to prize things like friendship over over really over physical intimacy. I do not care if I ever have a boyfriend or girlfriend again. I have several friends that are very, very dear to me, very, very close to me, that I love dearly, and that's never escalated any further, and I don't care if it does or not, because what I have with them is special. And as my sense of right and wrong has changed over the years, so too has changed my sense of what it is to be a good person. Again, this is something that a lot of people... Excuse me, my nose is kind of stuffy right now. I'm going to mute the mic for a second. Sorry about that. Anyway, again, the difference between being a good person and being a bad person is something that, again, gets instilled with you very often when you're very young, and a lot of people never figure out any different. They have a set of codes that's instilled to them from their parents, and they never walk away from it. It's not always a bad thing. If you teach your children that what being a good person means does not necessarily mean that they, have to stick to a specific list of rules. They might be able to truly become people that make positive differences in this world. I'm probably not explaining myself very well, and I realize that. Like I said, I don't have a script for this. It's really just off the top of the head and from the heart. But for a lot of people, the difference between good and evil is so complex, and I think it largely has to do with the list of rules that a lot of people judge it by. You know, just judging from my Christian background, if you look at how the relationship with God started with humans in Christian lore, it started very simple. It started like basically an intercelestial friendship with God. And there was only like one, for lack of a better phrase, rule that was applied there. Hey, don't eat that tree. And humans couldn't handle that one rule. Because it seems a lot of times that we, as humans, like to make things more complicated than they are. So, one rule, we fuck that up. God hands down a few rules later on, we fuck that up. So then you get into, the books of the Torah, the books of the law from Judeo-Christian lore. And all of a sudden it goes from the 10 Commandments to like 1,500 rules for everything. And people still fuck that up. Repeatedly, and in increasingly large ways. And just for me, honestly, I think a lot of those rules sometimes actually get in the way. Or at least that's what it seems like for me. Not to say that I don't want any rules for myself. Everybody should have standards for themselves that they live up to. But if you're starting to get down into the minutia of rules from religion or from any kind of moral standard, if you start getting down into the minutia of things, you are going to lose your way. You are going to lose the plot. So, you might be asking, how do I define what makes a good person and what makes a bad person? For me, it's not about what you profess. It's not about the rules you follow. It's about how you present. It's about the impact that your following those rules has. There are a lot of Christians out there, especially on the evangelical side, who follow what they consider to be their moral code, and they are despicable human beings because they're racist, they're homophobic, they're transphobic, they're misogynist, they use their rules to commit evil and claim to be a good person while doing it. That's not being a good person. That is the literal definition of being a hypocrite. For me, it's more about the effect of your actions rather than what actions you take. If you do something to help other people for the sake of helping them, that's a good act. If you do something that directly harms other people, either for the sake of harming other people, that is evil. I know it sounds very simplistic and childish, but honestly, simplicity and childishness may be a better way to look at it, or at least it is for me. Because I've seen the effects of what it is to just be so caught up in the rules, to be so caught up in your own little bubble of what's right and what's wrong, and it creates more problems than it solves. You know, that this is how we get things like widespread white supremacy. This is how we get things like gun violence. This is how we get things like war and pestilence and atrocities. That's how those things come into being. It has been a long held belief of mine since I started researching Christian apocalyptic lore that the only way any of this is going to happen is if humans make it happen. It's not some kind of divine judgment, it's humans screwing the pooch on an epic scale. And we may actually be heading for that given some of the events that have occurred during this year and the election of a certain person who has much worse hair than me, much brighter orange skin than me, and no self-cognizance whatsoever. And actually, self-cognizance is part of how you can be a good person. And actually, I should be clear. Being a good person is not the end goal of itself. It is something you become while you do other things. Being good, being evil, is something that you become as a result of your actions. If you make a positive impact on the people in your life, to them you are a good person. If you make a negative impact on people around you, to them you are evil. And I know it puts a lot on the perception of others, and we as humans have such a trouble with objective perception of such things. And actually that's kind of the point of what I'm saying, is that good and evil is not entirely objective. There are parts of it here and there that can universally be defined as a good act or an evil act. I don't think that there's... Well, actually, there might be some people that might defend mass genocide. They're called racists. They're called literal Nazis. But we have laws in this world, and we have rules in this world, and they are important to have because they do provide a structure for understanding society and working with other people. I'm not saying by any means we should abandon all rules altogether. In fact, most laws that are just, I am in favor of. That's why I want things like significant gun control. That's why I want things, that's why I care about things like the Geneva Convention. You know, rules for we prefer you not to commit war, but if you're going to commit more war, don't do this shit. You know, that's basically what my interpretation of the Geneva Convention. Try to avoid war if you can, but if you do go to war, just don't do this shit. And, you know, if you try to be a good person, with that as the end goal, you're going to fail. If you just try to help others, if you just try to, I guess if there's anything that you should be trying to do is you should be trying to understand people around you and help other people be better. Because if you help them be better, then that makes you better by extension. We all help each other out. Me being a good person is going to be a constant process. It's not an end point. It's a process. And you can't just say, "Oh, I followed a set of rules, so I'm a good person." No. It's about recognizing where your weaknesses are, finding ways to work around them. Keep growing over time. Do not stay static. Do not stay stuck in one place emotionally, doing the same thing over and over again. That's not how you become a good person. That's how you become a stagnant person. And maybe stagnant persons, depending on your definition of it, could be good or evil, but you're still not growing. Emotional growth is one of the most important things that humans can aspire to, because emotional, intellectual growth, those two are what power and drive humanity. We gain strength from our connections to other people and from gaining knowledge from other people. And even for those of us who have issues with sociability, like myself, it can be a source of power. I know this personally, because if I didn't have people in my life that cared about me, that truly cared about me, that have been good to me, my family and so many friends, I wouldn't be here right now. There's so many other places that I would be. Dead would be one of them. Possibly in prison had I not had a grounding force when I was young and really fiery. So, don't see being a good person as the end point. For lack of a better phrase, it's not enough to want to get to heaven. You should try to make heaven available here on earth. It's not enough to focus on yourself and what you do and the kind of code that you follow. Constantly evolve, constantly learn more. Being a good person is not the end goal. It's just something that happens to you along the ride. Keep it casual, y'all.